Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Freeze Peach Gaming. My name is Steven, and today we're looking at the Lazy DM's Companion Kickstarter by Sly Flourish. I read the original book, Lazy DM's Guide, and I quite enjoyed it. I incorporated a few of the concepts into my game, but I don't take it whole cloth. I found it to be quite excellent for improving my dungeon mastering, though. But before we get into this, I would like to ask you to like, comment, and subscribe. I'm trying to get to 10 subscribers by the end of October, and I need your help to do that. Well, let's get right into this. So here we have the Kickstarter for Sly Flourish's Lazy DM's Companion. This is the third book in the series, the first being Sly Flourish's Lazy Dungeon Master, which I actually have a bit of an excerpt here we can take a look at. It's really not a long book. I suggest you check it out. It's one of the only ebooks I've ever purchased. I think it was like $5 for the ebook. You can get the paperback right now for $14. It was really helpful in getting me to improve my dungeon mastering and to cut out a lot of the fat that I was spending long periods of time on that never came to fruition. In fact, before I read this, I had spent like 6 months working on this expansive world on an entire continent that my players were going to be able to run around in, and there was plot points that would happen at certain time periods, and they would have to react in their own way. It was supposed to be this long-going campaign that lasted about 3 weeks and then fell apart. So I decided I needed to trim out some of the fat, and Nerdarchy turned me onto this book. And the parts that I found really helpful are the tools of the Lazy Dungeon Master and down. Reskinning is probably the one I do the most. Lazy encounter design was really helpful. Using published materials. My group is particularly turned towards using published materials. We like something that's been tested and has been vetted, and a lot of other people have liked it. In fact, right now we're going through AD&D mods. We're going through the Dragonlance AD&D mods. And so far, I'm enjoying it as a player. The second one was Return of the Lazy Dungeon Master. I did not read this one. It seemed from most of the reviews I got at the time that it was just sort of more of the same, just compounding upon what the original Lazy Dungeon Master had talked about, and I didn't really think I would benefit from that, so I skipped it. This latest one, though, the Kickstarter for Lazy Dungeon Master's Companion, does look interesting. I might pledge on this one. We'll see. Let's go through this. So it says right here, 64-page softcover, guidelines to streamline 5th edition. That's the part that I'm going to fall out on, because I don't play 5th edition. Adventure Generators, that's the part that I'm particularly interested in. We'll get into that later. Tools for the Lazy DMs, and general purpose maps. Let's see. In 2018, with the support of more than 6,000 backers, we published Return of the Lazy Dungeon Master and the Lazy DM's Workbook. I'm interested in the Lazy DM's Workbook. For 3 years, DMs across the world use steps, concepts, and tools of these books to help them run flexible and fun D&D games for their friends and family. That's all good stuff. Helping people to become a better dungeon master is a wonderful thing, and I think that this approach is actually much better than the Mercer effect that we see, which I don't blame Matt Mercer for the Mercer effect, side note. But I do think that people just seeing what professional dungeon masters do doesn't help them as much as actually reading about the concepts and having a roadmap of a way to implement these concepts into their games. So let's see. Here they're talking about Return of the Lazy Dungeon Master. Let's see, Lazy DM Guidelines, tools for improvisation. Improvisation is very important when DMing. Quick tricks for lazy DMs, that's probably going to be really useful. Building an RPG group. I imagine a lot of people, when building an RPG group, it's either going to be your close friends and they're going to be interested in playing, or you're going to be playing on Roll20 or some other type of virtual tabletop. RPG safety tools, don't care about. Session 0 checklist. I actually am not a fan of the Session 0 of actually sitting down and having a full session dedicated to just building your character and talking about their background and everything. For my group, we go through characters so quickly that it's kind of unimportant. One-on-one guidelines, playing RPGs online. Once again, something I'm not going to really be interested in because I don't play online, but might be useful for other people. Running single-session games, teaching new players, Strong starts. Creating secrets and clues. Ooh, that might actually be really good. That's something that I'm not the best at. Building situations. Understanding exploration. Understanding exploration is something that a lot of people could probably use help on. I have had to sort of work my way through it. I tried doing a hex grind recently, and it turned out okay. It fell apart after about a month or so, but it was mostly just supposed to be a temporary game anyway. Spiral campaigns. Not entirely sure what the spiral campaign is. Revised guidelines for Theater of the Mind. I am actually quite fond of Theater of the Mind play as opposed to just having a grid, but I do both. Zone-based combat. I basically do zone-based combat when I do Theater of the Mind, but it's not quite the same. And point crawls. And 5e tools. I don't really care about them, but I'll go through the list. Options for first level play, lazy combat encounters, stress effects, monster difficulty dials, elemental monster templates, undead templates, improvised legendary monsters, running hordes, lazy treasure generator. I actually have written my own program for generating treasure for swords and wizardry because it can be quite time consuming. Sorry if this camera is getting bumped. I got a kitty over here that is helping me. Let's see, campaign generators. This is a part I'm really interested in. Actually, a friend of mine bought most of these. I did buy the first one, but the books of random tables. These were, we thought these would be like super useful, and at times they have been. The one I was really interested in was the Book of Random Tables quests, and honestly, I found it mostly useless. Personally, like they're very simple adventure hooks that I feel could be better made up on the fly. It's not bad for inspiration, but for actually like rolling on a hook, it doesn't always work. Campaign generators right at the top. NPC generator. These can be super useful. Zach Smith's book Vornheim actually has some wonderful NPC generators, along with the just his lists in general are actually really good. That's what I mostly go back to that book for. Villain generator. These can either be good or bad, we'll see. Sometimes they make sort of contrived villains. God generator, I don't see that being particularly useful, in my opinion. My groups aren't typically very focused on deities and the like. Fallen Kingdoms, that could be interesting. Cult generator, those are typically pretty good. You run into cults much more than you're going to run into gods. I see that being more useful. Alien worlds, my group would never use it. Random environmental locations. That sounds interesting. Settlements generator. That could be super useful. A lot of time, a settlement, when a players get into it, it's very much something that you're just going to pass through. So they tend to be full of a lot of cardboard cutout NPCs that you're never going to see again. And most of the time, the DM just sort of, at least in my group's case, we just sort of say, you can find whatever's in the basic section for supplies and the like, and that's what's there. Let's see. Wilderness exploration. That we'll see how he does on that once it comes out. Underground exploration. That could also be interesting. And Land of the Fae. I've never been the biggest fan of like Fae realm games. They tend to get a little bit too fantastic too quick. And adventure generators. See, this is the part that really comes in for the Random Book of Quest, and we'll see how it stacks up against that, because I found Random Book of Quest to be fairly lacking. The other books can be pretty good, and the Random Tables series for just trying to find a quick name or something for somebody, or a quick item that's found on a body, those can be pretty good for that. Let's see, Core Adventure Generator, Quest Templates, Dogs of War, Running Wars. I don't see wars coming up that often in games. I tend to avoid them. Haunted Lairs, that's cool. The Traitor, The Beast, Vengeance for Hire. That sounds interesting. Protect the Village, that's a classic. The Keep, also a classic. Invaders, fairly classic. Hunt for the Artifact, that comes down to half of the games you see. It's, we must go find the artifact. And The Heist. I feel that heist games aren't done quite as often because they're particularly difficult to pull off well. I've been wanting to either play in and run the quest that is at the back of the Grey Mouser and Favard book for AD&D, but we haven't gotten around to that yet. It does look interesting. It looks like it's a classic heist game. And we have our pledge levels. Seems like it's
Which,
sort of a $10, $20, 25, 75. Yeah, it's just things going up until you eventually get to physical and PDF of everything. Versatile maps. Interested in versatile maps. I do actually do a bit of map drawing myself. These look pretty good. Lazy DM's workbook, which came out along with the second book, included 10 lazy layers you could use when your characters went left when you thought they were going to go right. That's actually something he talked about in the first book, is never prepare for the players to go left. If you're going to give them an option of two directions, there should be something in both ways, or you should be able to improvise what is going to be on both ways. Lazy DM's Companion includes a number of maps drawn by Daniel Walthall, built by the same kind of versatility, including overland maps, castle ruins, dungeons, and caverns. Each map is intended to serve multiple themes in multiple ways, working hand in hand with the adventure generators included in, I will say, these are pretty good looking maps. I like the 3D effect that he gets with these, the way that things are sort of moving out. I might actually be borrowing that style in the future. That looks really good. Offset printing of the Lazy DM's collection, so you have offset printing. New to the Lazy Dungeon Master. Here we go. This is important. If you are new to Return of the Lazy Dungeon Master, this Kickstarter is the best way to dive in. Return of the Lazy Dungeon Master. So they're really talking about Return of the Lazy Dungeon Master when this is supposed to be about the companion, more so. Let's see. Return of the Lazy Dungeon Master offers 8 steps to help DMs quickly prepare for what they need to run their games and focus on staying flexible and being able to improvise as the story of our games expands at the table. This 96-page book covers how we prepare, run, and think about our fantasy games. So let's see. Okay, then we have estimated shipping costs and videos. Let's see. Stretch goals. Stretch goals are also always interesting. And just to say, they have absolutely kicked the crap out of their goal so far. The goal was for $15,000. They have 2 weeks left to go. They're already past $250,000. They are kicking the crap out of this Kickstarter here. And I'm actually glad for it. I think it's good. Sly Flourish has put out some good products in the past, and I think he deserves to have a good run of things. All right, stretch goals. Let's see what we've got. Ooh, that is a short list of stretch goals. We're focusing on making the Lazy Dungeon Master's Companion and awesome as we can up front. Thus, we won't be including stretch goals with this Kickstarter. You know what? I think that's actually that's not a problem. People wind up getting into a stretch goal spiral to where every time they hit a new level, they're just constantly putting out more stretch goals. So I think that's a good thing. Our goal is to fully fund everything we'd typically include in stretch goals, including internal artwork, maps design, and virtual tabletop map packs. Yeah, that's probably a good idea to focus on the main product rather than stretch goals. I always feel that the main product can suffer when people are focusing more on stretch goals, though I have seen some really cool ones, especially when they're giving out miniatures or small adventures, things of the like. So this does look interesting. I'm not entirely sure if I'm sold on it personally, but I'm definitely going to think about it. The adventure generator is definitely the part that I'm most interested in. I might wait until it comes out and I see someone do a review of it. I'm willing to bet Questing Beast is going to do a review of it. He reviews everything. They do have a 17-page free sample. Let's take a look at that. We have an introduction using random tables. This seems all very basic. That could probably just be skipped. Tools for improvisation. That's probably going to be good. Oh, yes, how to improvise difficulty checks. He kind of went through that in the first book, though. 10 is easy, 20 is very hard. Pick a number in between for something in between. Improvise damage. I have improvised damage in the past, just like, this guy does a d6, this guy does a d8, but I do feel it is sometimes good to have proper stats written out beforehand so you know what the damage of this guy is. Improvise stats. You have to do that a lot if you're trying to mix up different systems with OSR. Improvising stats does happen. Other improv tricks. Running hordes. Let's see, that's interesting. Let's check out running hordes. When running hordes, instead of rolling independent attack rolls or saving throws, assume that 1/4 of these rolls succeed. Increase or decrease that number depending on the situation. For example, if many creatures in the horde have advantage or disadvantage. So that's where I'm getting lost on the book, is I don't care about advantage or disadvantage because I don't play 5th ed, but I believe these rules could still track into an OSR game. Then, instead of tracking individual hit points for a whole horde, tally the damage done to the entire horde when any of its creatures are hit. Every time the tally becomes equal or higher than the hit points of any individual creature in the horde, remove a creature from the horde and reset the tally. Round monsters' hit points to the nearest 5 or 10 to make things easier. I don't know, that feels like people doing AoE damage are kind of getting a little bit gypped with that. It feels like it's not a bad way to just keep things moving along when you have a large amount of creatures going up against the party, but I feel it's also easier to just say, you have 20 creatures, give them a low amount of hit points, since they're likely not to hit the players anyway, and you're basically just rolling 20d20 in each round of your combat, hoping to get crits. Building an RPG group. This might actually be useful for a lot of people. RPG safety tools. Let's see. This is probably where you're going to lose me. Oh yeah, I absolutely hate this stuff. My very first video was on almost all of these topics. I hate these. I hate the concept of the X card or the red card. I despise it. Potentially sensitive topics can go. I hate all of these things. Cannibalism is the potentially sensitive topic. I hate that. Gore, potentially sensitive topic. No, go away. Cancer? People can't handle talking about cancer? Shoot. Starvation. Starvation is like one of the easiest ones to throw in there. Your party comes into a town. The town currently has a vast amount of starvation going on. There's this famine happening, and you find out that the famine is happening because a group of orcs have been coming in and stealing all of their food and burning their lands. And now the party is going out to kill this group of orcs. Bam. Easy, really quick, ready to go adventure. Oh, and of course they have to include transphobia, because everything has to be brought together. All of this needs to be intersectionalized. Paralysis. See, many of these things are common things that happen in gaming. Freezing. Freezing is a potentially sensitive topic. No. I hate all of that. I hate 100% of that. Let's see. Building situations. See, this is good. It's tips for building the situation. Think big picture. The problem with thinking big picture is your party going to actually follow through on these things? That will come down to each individual dungeon master having to make that choice. Complications. Let's see. Villain arrives, drunken brawl, rival infiltrators, magic goes awry. That's interesting. Monster summoned. Something is on fire, something explodes. Those are interesting. Just sort of quick table to, you roll a d10, add in a complication. It doesn't seem like many complications, though. I feel like for a proper list of complications, you need like 50, or this is going to get stale really quickly. Example locations. These all seem very vanilla example locations. Example inhabitants. Let's see. Orc knights, abyssal cultists, dwarf assassins. These are actually pretty interesting. Gnome pirates, grimlock cannibals, mages and servants. These are actually interesting choices here. Vengeful mercenaries, vampire thralls, war-scarred devils. Yeah. Example goals. Let's see. Steal an arcane tome, rescue a prisoner, kill a corrupt noble, evaluate enemy forces. That's an interesting one. That's one that you don't see a whole lot, is go on a scouting mission. Open a back door, plant false evidence. That's cool. Destroy an altar. That seems very vanilla, but could also be a lot of fun. Steal a crystal ball, recover secret plants. See, these are really interesting goals that he's giving here. The complications are interesting. The inhabitants are interesting. I feel like the locations are very vanilla, but it's a location. It's hard to go super unique on a location. You put all of these together and they might become a little bit more unique. Let's see. Spiral campaigns. I'm not sure what a spiral campaign is. Spiral campaign development builds campaign worlds starting in the area immediately surrounding the character, then spirals out, expanding the world as characters experience it. This section offers suggestions and inspirations for building a spiral campaign. Once again, I don't think this is something my group would use. We have had issues in the past with stick-to-itiveness, so I feel like if I come up to them and say, oh, here, we're going to start you off here, and we're going to spiral out, I don't know. Actually, thinking about it, that might work pretty well since we do have issues with stick-to-itiveness. I'm not stuck building this giant, huge world, spending 6 months working on it to have nobody really enjoying it by the end. Let's see, campaign pitches. Yeah, we've got a table of 20 here. See, this is one thing that I try to get better with, is coming up with more than 10 or 20 options. I feel that whenever you're creating a table or a list, 10 or 20 options become stale really quickly. I think that's one thing that Vornheim, as I mentioned before, did very well with. You look at a table and there's 100 options with multiple levels to it, and they're branching off in different directions. Those are some really good tables, and I try to use those as inspiration. Let's see, campaign fronts, local adventure locations. These locations sound a bit familiar. I mean, a bit different. I guess they're local, but not much different. Lazy combat encounters. This was one part in the original book that I do still implement occasionally if I need to do like a quick wandering monster because it feels like things are going a little bit too easy for them and they're planning on leaving the dungeon just to go and cash in some rewards. It's okay, let's throw a lazy combat encounter in there. I don't just ad hoc the stats as much as he does. I'll just sort of flip to the book until I find a difficult monster and go from there. Oh, scaling for higher levels. You mean the issue that every tabletop game has ever had? You just, tabletop games aren't designed to do high levels very well. You're going to want to retire around the time your characters reach 11th or 12th level because the power scaling just falls off and combat starts to become a very long drag if you want it to be difficult and actually a life or death situation. Wilderness exploration. See, once again, the big problem with doing wilderness exploration, same problem the other ones have, very short lists. If you're going to do a hexploration or a wilderness exploration, you need a long list. Like, each one of these lists needs to have 50 or more items on it to really keep things fresh and moving. Crafting secrets and clues. Like I said, this was a part I was really interested in. Let's see. Secrets and clues, as defined in Return of the Lazy DM, are short pieces of information the characters might discover during the adventure. Secrets and clues are initially written without regard to the method by which they might be discovered. Okay, yeah, that's basic overview of secrets and clues. Let's see. Character secrets. What family history might be revealed? What ties the character to this location? What ghosts or spirits haunt the character? Okay, these are pretty interesting. Historical secrets, NPC villain secrets, plot and story secrets. Okay, these are all pretty interesting. Core adventure generator. Patrons and NPCs. So you have, okay, and they give you disposition and ancestry to roll off of. So, see, here's a good way to take two tables of only 20 each and make them, in fact, much larger, because you now have behavior along with ancestry. Let's see, quests. Once again, I feel that quest list is a bit short. They're probably all pretty vanilla. Find an item, kill a villain, rescue an NPC. These are all very vanilla. Let's see, locations, monuments, and items. Alright, so we have... Okay, that's interesting. So, say you want to go to a barrow, and then roll on the list again, you get a 6. There's a megalith at the barrow. The item you are trying to seek is a circlet hidden within the megalith at the barrow. So that's a good way to mix things up. You put 3 lists together to come up with a single location. That's a good way to add some additional flavor and things don't get as stale as quickly. Condition, description, and origin. Okay, that's good for, location generation. Okay. Chambers, dungeon discoveries, dungeon monsters, traps, Hazards, treasures, spells. Okay, this is actually a pretty good section. And then different types of quests. Protect the village, so on and so forth. I think that's a pretty good view we've had of this so far. I'll definitely keep an eye on it. I may do just like a PDF of it for backing to the Kickstarter, but I'm probably going to wait until I see some reviews of it and purchase it myself. That's just how I generally tend to do things. Money's a bit tight for me, so I have to make decisions on what I'm actually, be picky and choosy on what I'm going to buy. And I feel like this is something that I might buy, might flip through once, and possibly not really use it again, with the exception of a few of those lists. But that is all I have to say for today. This video has gone on much longer than expected. That is all I have to say for today, so I hope all of you have a wonderful day and never be afraid to speak your mind.
Okay. What part of a vegetable can you not eat? The wheelchair! Ow! Waka waka!